All right, everybody, welcome to day one afternoon track of the Enterprise Track. We are here live from Santa Clara, California. I am very excited. I'm super excited for this next speaker, a good friend of mine who also is known in this industry as the best dressed man in XR. It's true. It's a true story. He stays up late, gets up early, but always looks fresh. And today, he's going to be talking about the AI catalyst, how general artificial intelligence is supercharging enterprise XR. And I'm super excited about this because we've just entered a whole new time period in humanity. And I think, everybody's like, oh, we had COVID, and that was a big moment in humanity. But nothing, when we look back in history, it will just be a blip compared to what AI will be. And I think November 30th, 2022 was that kind of kickstart point where AI became a household name for everybody. And now we're having to shift and change how we fundamentally think about pipelines. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the head of Lenovo's virtual reality department, Jason McGuigan.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Do you want to hand over you?
No, I'm all mic'd up. Good afternoon, everybody. So thanks, Alan, and thank you all for coming. So as he mentioned, well, I've already got my clock going, so I know the new Mission Impossible movie is coming out soon, but Mission Impossible is going to be for me to get this done in 25 minutes, so let's see what we can do. We're talking about how AI will fundamentally impact the XR industry. And obviously, we're talking about XR specifically because we're here at AWE, but it's going to be something that's going to impact every industry. Today, we're focusing on ours, and we're going to give a little background on it. But I want to start with this idea of a wheel. There's a concept called a perpetual machine. Perpetual machine is something that, once started, continues to grow. And it spins and it spins, and it doesn't need any additional energy resource to continue its momentum. It's an impossibility in the real world. In physics, it's impossible, breaks the basic laws of thermodynamics. It's not possible. But in the space where we're talking about, in technology, it's very, very common. For us, in the XR industry, that wheel has already started to turn. And GAI, which is also very hard to say, is going to be a massive boost for us. Before I go into anything further, give you a little bit of background. As Alan mentioned, I am the head of virtual reality at Lenovo. I handle our strategy from on the business side, as well as what we do hardware-wise, software, who we partner with, kind of all the odds and ends associated with running VR for our company. But in my background, in my past, I was the chief creative officer for a production company. So I'm very, very familiar with art tools, the creative tools that go into everything from production, director, producer, writer. I was a graphic designer. I did 3D art, did motion graphics. I was even a really shitty programmer. So there's a lot of things I know about in this space that apply directly to what we're going to be talking about today. I'm a big believer in VR, though. And as we're moving forward in this new medium, I think that we have the opportunity to realize that spatially interacting with the world as if it's actually there, is a big benefit over what we've been doing for the past few decades, interacting with rectangles. And as we continue to grow the spatial industry, we're going to see more and more of these needed assets that we're going to be able to create in a much more straightforward fashion because of GAI. I do believe that we learn better and we perform better and we enjoy things more when we're actively engaged with something and not just spectating through a 2D screen. So before I go any further, though, I want to make sure I mention that this is a big week for Lenovo, for the ThinkReality team. We've got some of our amazing ThinkReality team here with us. And the VRX, our new headset, was announced last year. It's finally come to market and started shipping just this week. So big day. Yeah. And that device is built exclusively for the enterprise. And all the things we're talking about today is really going to be a big boost for the enterprise customer because the enterprise customer has very specific needs, and the needs that they have are solely focused on their individual companies. Even if they are a mirror image of another big company out there, their identity, their choices that they make, how they train their people, their onboarding, everything that they do is unique to that organization. And we focus on that interaction with those customers. We're also very proud to be the first VR and MR devices that is built on Snapdragon Spaces from our good friends over at Qualcomm. I know some of you guys are here. Tomorrow, I'm imploring you to go see Vishal, our GM. He's in the back of the room. Vishal, say hello back there. So Vishal is actually going to be giving a talk about our overall business strategy, and he's going to be really focusing on the ROI and how businesses are going to drive these things home. But before we go any further,
the enterprise speaks their own language, and the latest word on the street is immersive technology is changing how they do business. It's why we built the Lenovo ThinkReality VRX. All-in-one VR plus full-color mixed reality with industry-leading specs, built exclusively for the enterprise. But what they're saying is, great hardware is just the start of the conversation. That's why we've also assembled a network of the most innovative software partners to create true industry solutions, improve teams, save time, save money, enable people to learn by doing, build lasting results and muscle memory with technical skills training, safe, repeatable. Teams can collaborate in XR from anywhere in the world, and yeah, that means management and support everywhere too. And provide services that fill in every gap. Even address privacy and security concerns and sticky topics like financing and procurement. All things Lenovo's mastered from decades of listening when the enterprise speaks. The Lenovo ThinkReality VRX. The conversation starts here.
so there's our new VRX. So the VRX falls very specifically onto what we refer to as the technology adoption curve. Now, we're very excited to bring it to market because we feel like we've hit a very critical point in the technology adoption for XR, especially around the enterprise. Now, we've already passed the innovation, the early adopters phase, and I believe that we finally passed that chasm. The chasm is basically where all technology goes to die. If you don't succeed, you fall into that chasm, doesn't come back out because the early adopters didn't believe in it enough, or it never actually made it into marketization. There was not an early majority that was able to pick it up. So I believe that we are in this early adopter phase right now. We've passed that chasm. Now, or the early majority phase, rather. Now, what that means is we've got a lot of room to grow. And as we're kind of going up that ramp, you notice it looks like very much like a hill. And if anyone remembers the legend of Sisyphus, pushing that rock up the hill. And that's really what we're doing as an industry. All of us here are pushing that together. But again, GAI is going to help us really push that much, much faster. We do have the folks on the tail end, the laggards, that will never actually change. That's my mother. That took about 15 years after the 3310 from Nokia was end of life to actually switch over to an iPhone. But we will get there. And we're going to have a lot of people coming along the way, specifically because we're going to be able to target so much more of their specific needs through GAI. But we still have a lot of barriers. Common barriers around cost, everyone's aware of that. We're going to reduce the cost of all the hardware, of all the production, everything else. There's technical limitations. Every device that's on the market, no matter who makes it, us, anyone else, is a balance of sacrifices. It could be too hot, it could be too heavy, it could be too expensive, not high enough resolution, not low enough resolution for running at efficient speeds. You're constantly making trade-offs. And as we make those trade-offs, as we look at that, we also have to remember things like Moore's Law. We will get there. There's that constant treadmill with technology. Moore's Law applies to the computational aspects of it, but then we have all these other laws that are out there. Everything from Kumi, Amdahl, Wirth, Wright, Butcher, so on and so forth. And there's rules around everything from GPU power to the manufacturing costs to power consumption for a battery. It means that all of these things combined will continuously drive down cost, drive up performance, and make our devices that much better. I believe in the next decade, we'll probably have about a 30x transformation in the technology we have in the palm of our hands. Something that you have in your hand today, 30 times more powerful a decade from now. Not far-fetched at all. Very, very doable when you start looking at all these things. Which means that faster, lighter, easier to wear VR devices, XR devices are on the horizon. But we need to get started on this road today. And that's where the VRX comes into play, is bringing enterprises onto that on-road. The biggest barrier, though, is usually associated with the cost of development of content, especially when your enterprise, as mentioned, it's very specific to your organization. And if you don't make it specific enough for your audience, you end up having the opportunity to lose their interest or not be specific enough to truly recognize ROI. Everything from 3D programming, everything that is involved in the creation of these assets is extremely difficult. And as we look at this wheel, this XR wheel, we have to recognize that we're pushing all those things forward. We're trying to spin this wheel faster. And we look at older technologies like television, for an example. When TV first came out, you had a couple of TV shows. But as people realized they liked it, it pushed the demand for more televisions. Hardware manufacturers went back and said, you know what, if we add color, maybe people will want to watch it more, and we'll sell more TVs. So people made more content for that. And it just kept on spinning that technology wheel. So there's an idea, and very straightforward, that as you create great experiences, it drives adoption. And as more people adopt the technology, it increases the investment by large organizations to create better hardware. That demand pushes that market forward. And as you have better hardware, you have the opportunity to have better experiences. As you have better experiences, it gives you even greater adoption chances, and it just continues that circle. It just spins around and around and around. But our biggest challenge, of course, in that content space is how we develop that efficiently. And Enterprise XR, as mentioned, is very, very specific. When we look at the common use cases, we know around training, soft skills, hard skills, safety, things of that nature, collaboration. We know all of these major areas. But how company X and company Y handle collaboration or their training is incredibly different. So your resources that you created, your 3D assets, some of it can be exchanged, some of your programming assets can be exchanged. But by and large, you're creating a lot of things from scratch, which means that there's a lot of resources spent doing the same things over and over again, which means that your people are working on those things, and it's not increasing your ability to make profits off of it. It takes lots of talent, lots of time, lots of money. Because as you're doing it, you have to remember, pushing that up the hill, that there's a whole team behind it. And XR development is very, very similar to game development, from the people that you actually have to employ. It's not one guy in a garage doing this thing typically. It's going to be design directors, creative directors, programmers, animators, everybody down this path, audio engineers, producers, you name it. I'm going to pass through some of these so we can get to some good examples here. But all of this stuff here is required to create any sort of quality content. And every single one of these roles will be dramatically impacted. If you could have higher production, higher turn time, what could you do with that? What could you do with those tools? So let's take a look and enter into this whole new era of AI. Now, AI is going to, of course, open up all these doors. It's the idea that you have this, this model that's trained off of human behavior, of human interactions, what humans create. It's trained off of that, and it creates these novel approaches to that same content. It takes what it knows from the rule set it's been given, and it turns it into new ideas that you could then use to employ and bring out into your productions. And that could be in the form of texts, imagery, everything. And we're going to go into some examples here. But every single day, we're seeing brand new releases. Every day we're seeing in this space is something absolutely game-changing. We see game changer after game changer coming out on the news every single day. And since Alan mentioned it earlier, when we started talking about the date this started, this was back in November where it started to become something that everyone was talking about. This is not even a year. And we can find thousands upon thousands of GAI tools out there already that can help us with our workflows. So we do know one thing though. None of them are perfect just yet. They're all kind of getting their feet under them. But there's one undeniable rule. This is the worst that they will ever be. They will only get better from this point forward. So anything you see is like, oh, I can see the wrinkles there. I can see the issues with that. I see the fringes on that 3D model. 6 months from now, you won't be able to. It's moving so quick. So we got to start with the granddaddy of them all, ChatGPT. It's the superstar. Everyone knows about it. Everyone uses it. I was throwing in a bunch of prompts in here. I started off with the idea that I wanted to, what did I start with? I think I started asking it about the difference between owners of cats and dogs. And then I said, I want you to write me a short story about a kitten that becomes a paramedic. And it wrote this beautiful story about it. And I said, all right, well, now I've got this idea where I want to create a dispensing mechanism for a dog's food bowl using PC and Bluetooth. Can you help me write that? Everything from the creative portion to the programming portion, all done in real time with a couple of clicks. Remember I told you I was a really bad programmer? I actually was able to program a batch file to trigger an Android debug bridge prompt for a customer the other day in 5 minutes. I would never have been able to do that without ChatGPT. So that's definitely in the realm of saving programmers a lot of time. I know quite a few programmers that are saying this is 10xing their abilities. That's a significant, significant boost. If you could do 10 times the amount of work, maybe you get to take a little bit more of a breather, or you could generate more profits. If you're working for yourself, you actually take in more work. But if you're working for an organization, that means you can propel that cycle even faster, especially if you're building enterprise experiences in the XR space. I think we get a special benefit because of the newness of our industry. Because XR is such a fresh industry, we're seeing so much more of a kick up from this because there just isn't a lot of experience out there. So if we can commoditize that experience, if we can give people that previously didn't have these abilities, we turn this into something that not just a few individual groups can do, and it turns it into something much more not can we do it, it's just when we do it. So moving more into the image front is MIDJOURNEY. MIDJOURNEY is basically everything I use to create the backdrops in most of these slides. Again, it's going to make everything look better. Makes my presentations look better, makes the visuals in games look better, makes the visuals and backdrops that you're seeing inside of any presentation or any sort of enterprise XR production better. Designers are using this across the board. You're able to type in any prompt and it's going to give you realistic imagery, artistry, everything around it. All of this stuff that you're seeing here is basically just 5 minutes of my time going through MIDJOURNEY, creating prompts and creating imagery for this presentation here. Amazing, amazing tool. Obviously, amazing time saver if you're in the design spectrum. Creating creative decks, storyboards, anything in between, absolutely a big deal. Getting into a little more of the esoteric stuff and maybe the directionality of where we're going, look at tools like Kyber. Now, Kyber is on, got a lot of prompts there. Kyber is on the video-based side. Now, this is a video I took with my iPhone in my hotel room yesterday. Now, that's a very beige wall on the backdrop, and this is a much more handsome version of me up here. So we've got a lot of things that are going on from just taking that piece of video, dropping it in there, and it synthesizes this amazing artistic sort of view of what I was asking it to show me. Now, there's benefit to that from a production standpoint if you're working in the front-end creative space, but where it gets really interesting with video is where you could start pulling motion capture from the video. And we're seeing this already with AI. Instead of having expensive rigs, instead of having to have all of these crazy motion capture apps, the outfits that they have to put on, all of the work that has to go into that, all of that expense that goes into it, it turns it into a very specialized field that only a few people can attain. So GAI is going to absolutely help taking video and turning it into motion that you could then take it over into your virtual productions inside of XR, giving your characters more realistic motions, making the interactions that they have with avatars that much more realistic as well. And we're going to see a lot more of this creativity overflowing into it as well. This next slide I think is probably my favorite because I don't have to talk for it. Give myself a breather. But the net of all this stuff is going to be just absolutely amazing visuals and a lot more realistic interactions that we're going to have inside of VR.
So I'm going to highlight two separate audio tools here. I'm using 11 Labs to speak to you and Moobert to provide the soundtrack. 11 Labs is a text-to-audio voice tool. It allows you to use fabricated voices to read your text in a human-like fashion. Where it gets really interesting is when you train it on your own voice. By uploading a few simple audio samples, I was able to create this fairly accurate representation of my voice that I can now use to read or voice anything. In addition, the music you are hearing is text to audio as well. but it allows you to describe the feel, instrumentation, and style of music you would like to generate, all royalty-free. Many in audio production are already using these. They're making entirely free-to-use voiceovers and on-the-fly narration without having to employ any third-party talent. It's also a great asset when you need to make small changes to a pre-existing narration, allowing you to train the model on the original and make rapid updates without going back to re-record. On the music side, creatives and audio teams are using these tools to decrease their production time and get rapid results to customers without royalty fees. The biggest impacts here are based around both time and cost, both the recording and production time, but sometimes even more significantly, the royalty costs. These extended fees can make a dramatic impact on budgets and can severely limit the creativity on the audio side. The end result, more engaging audio both in narration and dynamic music, significantly reduced production time and dramatic reduction in costs.
So you can see why that one's my favorite, because obviously I just get to stand here. So, amazing utilization there, and I'm going to go into a little bit about the talent aspects towards the end as well, because I do recognize that there's a lot of things in this that can be very scary for creatives. But this next one is something I think we're going to see a lot more of in the coming months and years. Everything to do with generative AI and 3D will be an absolute monstrous time saver for anybody doing production in the XR space. Every single asset you create, having to create that from scratch, is extremely time intensive. So you see this video here. This is me taking a 3D scan using Luma AI of my boot last night in the hotel room. So this is on the ironing board in the hotel room. Obviously, I was really prepared. I did all the videos in my hotel room last night. So, but with that, I was able to create this 3D model that I'm able to sit next to the real one. And there's a little bit of fringing on the edges, and there's things that you'd have to do to clean up inside there. But that is able to be brought directly into a game engine, directly into another 3D program, and you can manipulate it. You can use it as the source. That's using a technology called NRFs, or neural radiance fields, but we're going to see a lot more of generative AI, like traditional GANs or diffusion models, that are going to create text to 3D assets. And a lot of this stuff is going to be the foundational information that's going in there. I was also able to take this app, which is a free app on the App Store, and walk through a room with about 11 seconds of video and create a realistic 3D representation of that room and drop it into the Unreal Engine and actually have something that would be a photorealistic backdrop within minutes, just by walking in and scanning it. And it just captured the entirety of it with a phone. And one of the final examples, obviously, I'm going to jump through some of these here because we're running out of time, but one of the final examples is one of my favorites. And obviously, we're seeing a lot of impact with the 3D aspects, and we're going to see continual growth as we get better tools in there. But this is going to be one of my favorite ones because Blockade Labs gives you an idea of what's possible now and also a vision of where we're actually going. So I actually took a picture of this room last night, or came in the room here last night and saw this stage. I was like, I wonder if I can go in Blockade Labs and just tell it what I want. And it screwed up the first one because I didn't clarify it was an indoor space. But I drew out those little spaces, and you can see it kind of got the right idea. It has the screen in the right spot, has the seats and everything. I was able to do that in a couple of seconds, and I was then able to take that unwrapped 360 image and drop it right into a VR headset and see that in full 360. You're going to be able to speak into existence 360 worlds, fully realized with 3D objects within this year. It's coming. It's something you're going to be able to utilize to prototype and eventually as final stage deployments. So I'm going to jump through a little of these last slides there quick. But I do want to talk about kind of what's next. We're seeing a lot of crossover interaction with the game engines. Roblox is actually leading the way in some of this stuff. You'll see an example here where someone just says, blink the headlights when the user presses B, and it writes the code for them. They're just typing out in language what they want to happen, what they want to have happen within that game engine, and it writes out the code. They want rain, they want it to float, does everything on the fly. They want to change the texture mapping on it. You see that at the beginning here. They want different colors, they want a different texture on there, all readily doable in real time. It's going to open up these new abilities to everyone. So that means everyone will be a creator. And a lot of people will start to think, is this going to take my job? And I do not believe that. I do believe that it's going to give creators an absolutely enormous boost to their already significant skills. They're going to be able to produce more, they're going to be able to be more creative, they're going to be let free of the shackles that time previously put on them. Just because everyone has a phone in their pocket and can take a video doesn't make everybody Christopher Nolan or Steven Spielberg. You still have to have that idea, you still have to have that direction, you still have to have a purpose, and that's where creators are really going to come in. I do believe they will benefit the most when this all shakes out. As we kind of come back down to reality, we do have to recognize that the whole focus of all this, things that we're talking about in this enterprise track and businesses being interested in this space, is really around the idea that there has to be a need in society, there has to be a need by businesses for this technology. And we're seeing it more and more. And why does Lenovo care about that? Why do we care about that as a collective group within our organization? Well, we want that wheel to turn. Not just because it's going to generate more profit for us, because we recognize that there's a capability for us to build more devices, build more, the VRX 2, 3, 4, 10. We want to be able to continue to push that momentum, push that wheel to help businesses the way we've been doing it for decades. Our core structure is not around just moving boxes, it's around creating solutions. And creating solutions means we have to think outside that individual, here's a box with hardware in it. We do believe that wheel has just continuously been bolstered by AI. And we're going to see that move faster and faster as we get more dynamic, more high quality content. And we're already seeing that being employed by some of our ISV partners like Tailspin and Engage that are already interacting with AI within their experiences. And we're going to see that come across more and more to our other ISV partners, to the individual developers, and pretty much anyone else that wants to get involved with this development. I'm seeing the blinking 000, so I'm going to wrap up. Sorry, guys. I do want to mention, though, the biggest aspect about why people should care, even if they're not in the creative space. It's because if you are in the enterprise space, you like money, right? There's no denying that businesses want to actually keep more of the money that they invest. So we have tons of examples of the benefit of XR. We have, you're going to see a million talks this week about why XR is so fundamentally good for people to learn with, to interact with, to get help with, for their health, for their mental well-being, for their industries. All of those things are going to be continuously, good? Okay, thanks. All those things are continuously pushing us forward. And every single one of them is creating a return. Safer teams, better trained, less errors and injury, means that you're saving more money. If your teams are more productive, it makes you more money. If you increase the output because of your training, it will make you more money. There is a dramatic impact on the ROI structure. We're gaining a lot more return and we're making less investment with a lot of these tools being employed. We have decreased investment per use case and increased return because of those specialized experiences. And it will continue to shrink and create a bigger disparity between the two. More R, less I. It's what every single business wants. And to close it out, we want to talk about where this is. Now, there's this idea that it's coming. It's not overnight. It is improving. But it is here. It is not something that you have to think about months or years from now. It is something you need to pay attention to in this moment and integrate it into your workflows and figure out how you're actually going to make this, this moment in time, this very unique spot that we're in, be absolutely a game changer for your organization. It will disrupt a lot of industries. It's going to change a lot of the way we work. We have to accept that there's going to be a fundamental difference with how we operate with our technology today versus what we did last year. And we're going to see more and more of those digital and physical worlds converge, which means that we're going to need more spatial content, more people able to create that content, and more devices and ability to consume that through partners like Lenovo. I do believe that this is the catalyst, and we're extremely excited, as mentioned. ThinkReality VRX started shipping this week, so very, very excited for that. We'll be showcasing it here at the event. Implore you to come by and take a look over at our booth or over at Qualcomm's booth. But I do want to close out with the idea that AI and all the tools we're talking about are meant to be assistive technologies, and everything we do is an on-road to this new medium. Enterprises will continue to work with us because they trust us, we keep their business moving, and we think about the future in routes like this. We are the largest PC manufacturer in the world. That means we ship a lot of boxes, but we're more known as a reliable business partner. And although the VRX is what we're talking about this week, we have to remember that that's just part of keeping this wheel turning. So as mentioned before, the hardware itself is just the start of the conversation. And I do believe that this year, we're going to have a lot to talk about. Thank you.